Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So, our panel discussion is on zero-day exploits, blood diamond in the security trade. To discuss on this particular topic, I would like to welcome Mr. Agnidipta Sarkar, Group CISO, Bio, Biocon. Welcome, sir. Mr. Durga Prasad, Head of Cybersecurity, HSBC Technology. I would like to welcome you, sir. Mr. Rajesh Session, Director of Sales Engineering, India, FireEye. I would like to welcome you, sir.
Hi.
Mr. Kunal, former Managing Director, Global Residents Federation, APAC. I would like to welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Srinidhi Venugopal, Senior System Engineer, International, VERSEC. I would like to welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
So now I would request the moderator to please take over this session.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, maybe good evening for everybody who's joining in from so many places. So I think we have the full panel available here. And so, it's good time that we begin. So, when AISS came to me with this topic, I mean, they've been kind. This is a fantastic topic. Zero-day exploits, blood diamond in the security trade. And a little research, revealed that this was a comment made by somebody called as Nicole Perlat, who is a security correspondent for the New York Times, and she actually wrote a book on which contained this particular comment, and she was talking about zero-day exploits. But before I get into that topic, let me introduce this fantastic panel. Um, Let me start with Durga Prasad. Would you introduce yourself? Durga dropped out, is it? Okay. Kunal, would you
Yeah,
introduce
sure.
yourself, please?
Will do. Thanks, Mr. Sarkar. Good morning and good evening, everyone. Greetings. My name is Kunal Segal, and I've been a cyber evangelist for over 15 years now. Currently living in Singapore, but originally I hail from Chandigarh in India. My specialization is in the area of cyber threat intelligence, and I work with a non-profit by the name of Global Resilience Federation. In case you haven't heard of them, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a very small non-profit. They specialize in creating ISACs, or Information Sharing and Analysis Center. The first mission I had was to bring in Financial Services ISAC, or FS ISAC, to Asia, which was headquartered in Singapore for all of Asia Pacific. Phenomenal role, did that very well, was supported by the Singapore government. And subsequently we did one more ISAC by the name of OT ISAC, or Operational Technology ISAC, also headquartered in Singapore for the Asia Pacific region, also supported by the Singapore government. So been in this space for very long, very strong advocate of that the good guys need to gel well together. We have to work together to fight cybercrime in a cohesive manner. Basically, if the bad guys are working together, why should the good guys not do the same thing? That's my philosophy in life. Thank you.
In fact, Kunal, I was wondering if we could create something for the pharma industry, an ISAC for pharma, because that is now the new domain of interest, right? Ever since the COVID-19 started. So pharma and healthcare probably need an ISAC very soon. Next in line, Rajesh, would you introduce yourself?
Of course. Thank you so much, Mr. Sarkar. So my name is Rajesh Session, and I lead the system engineering for FireEye. Obviously, you probably all know about FireEye. I've been in the industry for approximately about 31 years right now. Uh, I used to actually lead the advisory services at Cisco earlier, and in FireEye for close to about a year. So, been there, been into multiple domains, including security, obviously, and networking, as well as systems, as well as programming. So, looking forward to actually share my knowledge with you, and that's where we are. Share knowledge, and let the good guys work together.
Good. Thank you, Rajesh. Srinidhi, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi. First of all, thanks for the entire team to bring this, forum up. It takes a lot, and it's very important that we have such forums. So I'm very glad to be part of this session. My name is Srinidhi. I'm handling pre-sales or sales engineering for the international division at Versec. And with my 12 plus years of experience with cybersecurity, and I've been associated with various global cybersecurity organizations in the past. So I'd be more than happy to talk about the innovative edge that our organization brings in to the cybersecurity realm. So yeah, I'll look forward for interacting with you further.
We were actually hoping that Prasad would also join in, and let's keep that hope open till now. Technology has its benefits and issues when you want them to. Moore's law. But to begin with, um, let me tell you something very interesting. I mean, we all know about zero-day exploits, right? That's not new for this forum. Um, a zero-day exploit is a piece of code that takes advantage of vulnerability of a software, and and typically in a situation where which was hitherto unknown, which means the software owner or the company which created the software does not know about that weakness as yet. So while Nicole Perlat has written a very exciting story of how nation states are stockpiling zero-day exploits, trying to hit the blind spots that organizations may have, which is very similar to blood diamonds. Our discussion today shall be more conservative, and we shall rather focus on the enterprise and the kind of stuff that enterprises need to do to protect, to prevent, and protect themselves against zero-day vulnerabilities or exploits, especially in light of India's rise in the cyber world and our increasing dependency on the digital platforms, right? With so much of digital transformation happening around us. My first question then to Rajesh, considering that FireEye is technically in the eye of the storm, you are providers to the a whole world, probably the who's who of the world are probably your clients. What has been your experience with zero day? Um, what kind of trends do you see happening? Uh, Tell us more about the proliferation of zero day or the kind of enterprises that usually get attacked. Rajesh?
Surely. Thank you so much, Mr. Sarkar. So
Uh,
I'll actually
Give
start
me a second. I think Durga Prasad has
Durga's
joined.
joining. Yeah,
Hi.
of
Durga,
course.
would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Agnidipta. Sorry, I had a network disconnect and had to join back. So I'm Durga Prasad. I work for HSBC. I'm the country CISO for India. And I've been in cybersecurity domain for close to 20 years now.
Thank you. I'm not going to tell you how many years I have been online, but you can guess that from my beard that I'm certainly more than all these young guys here. Um,
Yeah,
so,
obviously.
so let me go back to Rajesh. Go ahead.
Uh,
You were telling us
of course.
about zero
Yes,
day
of course.
exploits.
I'll start. So thank you so much, Mr. Sarkar. So I'll actually start with the last part of the question that you just asked, right? What kind of enterprises are usually getting attacked? The simple answer is pretty much everybody, right? So there is no such thing as a big enterprise will actually get attacked or a small enterprise will get attacked. I mean, pretty much everybody is vulnerable from that perspective. But there definitely are specific focus areas. I mean, for example, if you look at the last year, typically the number one industry that actually got attacked, or basically was targeted, was obviously the financial segment. The second segment that was actually sort of targeted was the retail and hospitality part. And third was healthcare. So as you mentioned, it might make sense for for Kunal to work on a pharma industry. That makes a lot of sense. Is there an echo? All right. Perfect. So just going ahead, right? We just talk about what are the trends that we typically see out here. So as I mentioned, sorry about the echo. But again, so as I mentioned, a couple of things that we actually see quite prevalent right now is one, obviously the general median dwell time globally is decreasing right now. It's about 24 days versus some 70 something days earlier. And I'll talk about dwell time because that's kind of very, very relevant to the conversation we're going to have today, right? The second part that I want to talk about basically is the general tendency of ransomware is actually kind of migrating more towards ransomware/extortion. So that's actually happening quite a bit. Now, getting into the conversation about zero day attacks, and how do we sort of typically talk to customers about how they should protect themselves? I mean, you've got the general prevention mechanisms that are very, very relevant, right? But a couple of things that you need to remember is prevention can only do so much, right? And there will definitely be a time where you will actually get compromised. So the thought should not only be on prevention, it should actually be on detection and response as well. That being said, a couple of things that I do want to talk about up here basically is that when you're talking about a zero-day exploit, that is just part of the whole attack, right? So you've got a mechanism which basically lets you access a particular software to do certain things. For example, we're just talking about the log4j thing right now, which essentially will will allow you to run a command, which will probably download something, and that's just one part of it. And the reason I talk about this as just one part of it is I'm sure you've actually sort of heard about the attack, the MITRE attack structure or the kill chain, the rocket kill chain. I mean, so those are different phases that an attack is. I mean, the attack kill chain is approximately about 14 phases, while the standard Lockheed is about 7 phases. So exploiting the zero-day would probably be just one part of it, right? And what you need to do basically is make sure that you're looking at the other parts of it, because it is not only about breach, it is about impact. And if you remember, I talked about something called dwell time. The dwell time is the most important part here, because you have to think about when a particular malware or a particular exploit or a particular vulnerability is availed upon. That's basically what allows the attacker to have access to something in your infrastructure. And that's where he actually starts this campaign. I mean, that's basically where it's inside. So the lateral movement part, the gaining, privilege, the being able to sort of exfiltrate data, those kind of things basically are what really comprise the impact. So that's basically, the general trend of it. We see we see that the dwell time decreasing. We see a lot of echo. Yeah, so we see a lot of the ransomware conversations moving into extortion functions, right? What I want to talk about basically is the fact that you should be concentrating on response and detection, and not only prevention. Okay, and I mean, so a couple of things that you should probably be thinking about is make sure that you have a very strong tracking strategy, because that will actually protect you a lot. Remember that cybersecurity is not really a technical problem only; it's a business problem. So you need to make sure that the whole organization, people who are the stakeholders, are involved. So do things like do regular red teaming functions, rather than tabletop exercises. Make sure that you actually have your folks trained, or basically ready to sort of respond by doing things like cyber range training. The other important part basically is to make sure that if you are compromised, the controls that you have that actually have have the data that is available, that's very, very important. So invest in something like an EDR, which actually helps you do a backtrack, lets you understand what is the scale of the threat in your infrastructure. So again, as I said, zero-day attacks are not the end all of everything. If you actually have a robust strategy to respond against cyber threats, what is unknown will always branch into something what's known. So the land and expand kind of attack is basically what will usually be used. So concentrate on that. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Rajesh. You practically finished the entire discussion in one shot.
Apologies.
Let me go over to Srinidhi. So, Srinidhi, come from an organization that deals with protecting applications. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Very faint, very feeble.
Okay, I'm able to hear everybody very clearly. But the question that I had for you is that you come from an organization that provides protection into applications. What is your view of the zero-day attack? How does it manifest into stuff that you manage, and what do you see?
Yeah, yeah. So before talking about how things can be implemented, or how at least an organization like Versec implements its security strategy, let's take a look at what exactly happens during an attack, or what is the approach towards securing a given workload in today's time. So there could be multiple layers of exploits and attacks on a given server, right? So it could be a web application server, like we all have been talking about the Log4j. It's predominantly found in a web application, or a server on which you have a Java component that is running, right? So the exploit may come in by exploiting such Java runtime, right? It technically gets into your Java runtime through the memory aspect itself by exploiting an existing vulnerability. So that's one way. And there are also other different ways, like we saw Print Nightmare a couple of days back, and that exploited altogether a different vulnerability within the organization or within the given workload. So if you consider a given workload, there are multiple points of entry for any exploit to come in. And unfortunately, in the given world of security strategies and solutions that we have out there, we do not have a solution which will not rely on chasing the threat. So the challenge is, we are either looking at a threat or a malware to identify what it is, to be able to block it. We are in a situation wherein we need to know what an attack looks like to be able to block it. And fundamentally implementing protection against a zero-day attack, it literally will demand a security tool to implement a strategy with which it can block an attack even without having seen it in the past, even without having to demystify it or decrypt it once it has been rolled out. So having that said, we have all seen defense in depth kind of a strategy, wherein we have a lot of security tools starting from the perimeter tool and all the way down to the application servers. And even after the application servers, there are plenty of tools which actually operate on identifying more information about the exploit itself, do some sort of threat hunting kind of an activity. And all of these tools definitely bring a lot of value to the security teams. But having that said, we also need to have a mechanism which will potentially block all the attacks, irrespective of whether it's a known attack or an unknown attack, irrespective of whether it's originating from a system level vulnerability, or it could be an application level vulnerability. So Versec today has a platform which can actually go ahead and detect attacks at various levels within a given workload. The exploit can come in at the operating system level, like in the case of a Print Nightmare, or it could even come at an application level, like in the case of a Log4j vulnerability. So irrespective of that, the fundamental goal behind Versec security platform is to start protecting the servers from the inside and not rely on the channel through which an exploit can come in. We end up protecting the entire server from the inside, thereby mapping out every execution, every calls, and every system calls and other executions triggered not just by the operating system components and also by your application code. And just by getting that visibility will put you in a very good position to be able to see and react to different type of attacks. And this time we can also superimpose another strategy of being a positive security model. So along with having visibility from inside of the servers, irrespective of the channels, we can even apply the strategy of being a positive security there. So the pros of positive security is that without having to fingerprint an attack, without having to identify an attack, without having any past precedence of an attack, the security tool will be able to highlight something that is alien to the server. some execution that has been triggered from an alien input, something that has come from outside of the server and not by the system's own files or the compiled code or the application files. So that type of deterministic approach will definitely protect against servers and workloads, even against the unknown attacks. And that's because every new day we get to see a new vulnerability. And predominantly the way the security team goes about patching or blocking those vulnerabilities is pretty much to the point, right? So if there is one part of the server which is vulnerable and a specific exploit can or a payload can exploit that specific part of the server, then the patch includes that payload against that part, right? So usually you don't have a security policy which covers all of the components, all of the running entities, all of the interpreters and binaries present on your server to execute what they are intended for. So Versec implements this positive approach and definitely ensures that your operating system files, your binaries that are present in the server, and including your application, which is rendered by your runtime environment, executes only what it is intended to execute. So anything that comes in from a user input or from anything that is alien from outside channels will be carefully monitored. And if that results in the modification of executions or are part of the executions themselves, we raise an alert and block that attempt during runtime. So that is a very unique proposition to block against or protect against unknown attacks, because now we don't have to rely on signatures or patterns or anything about the past precedents. So that approach is something that Versec emphasizes on, and it has turned out to be very effective against all of the known and unknown attacks that we've seen in the past.
Okay, so what we have heard till now is that Rajesh talking about what zero-day exploits are, and how normally the organization should be looking at it. But Srinidhi getting on the fact that if you are able to detect and address it at the runtime, then probably you are better prepared for an exploit that you did not know existed, right?
Right.
But
Right.
let me go over to Kunal. Kunal comes from extensive experience of looking at intelligence feeds. Kunal, what have you seen? How do these propagate? Do they have a time of the year propagation, or are they not connected? There is no pattern to it, or is there a pattern to it? For example, do these attacks come close, increase during holidays? Um, is there any pattern, any trigger, anything that you can put your finger on?
Sure. And good question. And before I get to the answer to the question, allow me to unpack the question. I've been hearing very attentively to Rajesh, Srinidhi, and some of the other comments that we've heard today, and all of them are spot on. Right? There's nothing that I can um, disagree to. I mean, all of these are good advice. We spoke about prevention is not even enough. We spoke about known and unknown attacks. I'm going to add one more dimension to this. And let me try and explain why we need one more dimension to this problem. And the first thing we have to understand, there's no shortage of crisis in the cyber world, and I'm sure the entire audience is going to agree over here. Yes, right now log4j is in the news. Everyone is worried about it. It's a really really nasty piece of vulnerability that's been identified. Unfortunately, the patch has a vulnerability as well, and I mean, everyone is tackling with it, understood. But it is not, it does not end here. It does not end here. It did not end with the Delta variant of coronavirus, unfortunately, and Log4j is not gonna. It's not gonna be the last, right? It's never ending. The second thing everyone's gonna agree with is that there is a shortfall in terms of cyber talent in the industry. It's not me saying it. It is what every single analyst, every single research firm have said, and there are estimates that range from tens of millions in terms of shortfall to hundreds of millions in terms of shortfall in terms of global talent. So now, if we put both of these problem statements together, it is not rocket science to figure out that we cannot be reactive in security. So meaning if your security team is running from one incident ticket to another, they are looking at one alert, second alert, third alert. One fine day, they're going to miss something. It is not rocket science. They are going to get exhausted. They're already understaffed. They will miss something. I'm sure the tech is there to help them. No matter what, there will be a shortfall. So what's the answer here? And the answer here is, how do we become proactive in security? So rather than waiting for us to be attacked, what can we learn from our peers, from our competitors, from our industry, from our from the other countries? What have they already been noticing? And the analogy that I would like to use here is, imagine you were living in an apartment building, right, a complex, right, and one of your neighbor's house gets broken into. Would you want to go and understand how did that happen? What exactly did the robber do to break into that house? And would that intelligence or would that piece of information be useful for you? Think about that, right? And that's the whole philosophy behind intelligence. And it's not rocket science. This is not having a crystal ball. It's just being aware of what's happening in the industry, what's happening with everyone, and you could use that intelligence in an actionable manner, and you can do that in a very, very fast turnaround time. And hence it becomes easier for the security teams. You are proactively defending attacks rather than being reactive. Now that's it. So Mr. Sarkar, to your question, is there a correlation between holidays and cyber attacks? The answer is absolutely yes. Look at all major attacks, it goes up during holiday times, right? That is not a coincidence, especially APT kind of attacks. It is a known fact that it would go up during holiday times, and all famous holidays, all the way from Lantern Festival in Taiwan, and there's lots of stories what happens during that time. Christmas, Deepavali, name it, all major events would have that, with one exception. And a dollar for anyone who guesses which exception is that. The biggest in Asia is the Chinese New Year. Attacks go down during Chinese New Year. I'm not gonna say why. I mean, I'm sure everybody would have figured out by now. It is a known fact. Cyber attacks go down during Chinese New Year, and pretty much for every other holiday it goes up.
Maybe the Chinese are not visible at that time. They go hiding. Who knows?
I did not say that, FYI.
But to your point, and I think you made two very important points, is that uh, we have a severe shortage of manpower, of qualified manpower, and the fact that the vulnerability is probably the first step. There are more coming. I am as I listen to news, as I listen to chatter on other domains. I am now quite confident that probably there is another attack coming, which is going to use a log4j. Who knows? That could even be a ransomware. So therefore, it's extremely important we understand what Durga has been doing, because Durga represents the end user, right? That's where the attack will land. I mean, you may want to listen to Rajesh, Srinidhi, Kunal, me, but that's where the attack would land. What, in your view, are some of the best practices that you think an enterprise must do to prepare themselves against zero-day attacks? Okay, before you go ahead, I'm going to also repeat what Kunal just said. With an exception of a particular new year, let's understand that our topic was about blood diamond in the security trade. The reason that Nicole Perlat wrote that book is because nation states are actually funding and buying up zero-day exploits for that particular day when they can do something with it. We still don't know what that is. And with that as a context, please tell us more. What should enterprises be doing?
Okay, thank you. Good question, Agnidipta, and very pertinent to what is happening in the current scenario where most of the organizations are trying to cope up with Log4j. So I mean, I'm not. There are plethora of tools and tools available which would provide this kind of security at multiple level of security, defense in depth, zero trust architecture. So we've been using all this jargon, but I mean, what I would say is the top 5 things I would advise for an enterprise to have as a minimum baseline or minimum practices is, first thing is to relate an analogy, the robbery is already in the house, the thief is already in the house, and now you're trying to minimize impact, because there's no guarantee that security is 100% impossible, that we all of us agree. So the first thing is imagining that we are all under crisis, we are under an attack, which we are currently in. What kind of things would I apply? The first thing applying logically to our real world things also, the first thing I would look at is my critical assets. What are my critical assets to my business? How could I reduce my business impact? So I would focus on the first thing any organization should do is identify your critical assets, make sure those are protected, and if there is anything like a workaround or segregation, and reduce our attack surface. In a way, reduce our attack surface, identifying where your critical assets are, where your crown jewels are, and protect them. And the second thing is have a minimal impact. Ensure the services continued, the business, the customers, end users, and customers are not impacted through your procedure, through your controls or alternate measures. So that's the second important thing. And one thing that we have noticing, which is where Versec or FireEye were helping with some of the tools, where have your network segmented, because a particular cluster or a particular systems or a particular network getting impacted won't impact other systems like your databases or your internal systems. So I would say have some kind of a strategy where you identify you have network segmentation in place so that the attack surface remains minimal. And the fourth and the key element I can think of is you should have strategy for time to time patch management and strategy for managing your patch cycle. So because in couple of large organizations, the patching cycle itself take longer. So you mean even if it is a high vulnerability, it might take, considering the kind of estate we got, it might take a longer time. So define a patch management strategy and have some cycle or have some processes to expedite patch management procedures, so that the impact is reduced and it is contained. And the last and the final step, final thing I can touch upon is have some comms plan, because we a lot of organizations are nowadays dependent on partners. So I can't reckon any company which is not dependent on partners for either for services or products or any kind of niche services. So what if your vendor also is under attack? While organization A is under attack, their partners are also under attack. And so this is a two-pronged approach they need to manage. So have some comm strategy, have some strategy where you are in touch with the vendors to ensure the information which is in their control is also secured and not exposed.
Fantastic. I think you made a lot of important points, and my takeaway was with the partners. Not many people focus on that area, and of course the other best practices that you shared. You remind me of a situation that I had seen earlier. So when you go to a shopping mall and you see that there is a particular sequence, if you press the ice cream buttons, you get the ice cream without paying for it. So now here comes the temptation. Would you want to take out the free ice cream, or would you want to alert? The most prudent thing would be to call up the ice cream vendor and tell him, look, you have a problem.
Right.
But there lies the main thing, and that defines how we react to different scenarios. And the second point is, let's say there is a button to call the ice cream vendor, and you're pressing it, and the ice cream vendor is not arriving. Let's say you decide to not take the ice cream, but to report it, and then you go and press the button that calls the ice cream vendor, or in an equivalent world, let's say you press the bell for the fire alarm, but the fire warden is not coming. What do you do then? And that becomes a big issue. I'm going to go over to Srinidhi. So Srinidhi, one topic that Durga talked about was patch management. How important do you feel is it that patch management be an operational strategy? I mean, the recent Log4j simply told us, forget patch management. Asset management is what information security really depends on. But what's your view on patch management? How does that implicate and apply to applications? Probably in about 2 minutes, if you can.
Sure, definitely. So yeah, very important aspect, at least from an end user perspective. Patch management can become a pretty daunting task for a lot of organizations. It's equivalent to cleaning Ganga or cleaning the entire government of corruption. It's that massive. It's the Herculean task to actually do that, because the patch management, the entire process of patch management starts by analyzing what sort of vulnerabilities exist in the system. And just bear in mind that we are going behind the known vulnerabilities that are existing in the system. And eventually what comes out of the patch management, or the target of for patch management, is what you've assessed using the known vulnerability information that you have. But that, though it is so daunting and takes a lot out of the security teams, it still doesn't assure you that you will be protected against all sort of unknown vulnerabilities, because that itself will not be even considered for the scan analysis in the beginning, the vulnerability analysis in the beginning, to be able to patch them. So this brings us to a another open-ended challenge about how do we go about patching everything. Usually, even to patch what is already known to us, we take a huge time. The cycle really goes on to months together at times. And this process of keeping up to date with a certain patch, as I said again, each patch pertains to one problematic part of the server and one specific payload which can exploit that. So each new payload variant comes in, or each new part of the server that gets vulnerable to a known or a new type of vulnerability, then the amount of patch that you really have to apply exponentially increase. So the approach should more be from a perspective of not being able to not being able to rely on the known vulnerability, the known attack variants, to be able to block something that may come in the future. In fact, we heard a lot of talk that happened around the attacker already being inside. And that's a very, very valid point. Today we are not even we can't even surely say that the attacker, we are all set and waiting for the attacker to come inside. The attacker might already be inside, or for all that and just waiting for the right time to trigger his activities. Like Kunal mentioned, such activities are predominantly seen at a very at a high scale during the regular festivals and other events that the people get occupied with. And having that said, it clearly shows that the attacker would already be inside and he's picking his own time to actually launch all of these stuff. It is well timed as well, right? So these are two important points that actually will show you that runtime matters, because runtime is the time where the attacker actually tries to exploit that vulnerability to bring out all the nefarious tasks or his intended tasks on the server. Right? So we should also have a control, not just by identifying the vulnerability and identifying the attack or the payload itself, but we should also have control such that we do not let anything execute something that is alien to the server. And that control has to come in at the runtime. And that's the only way that you can block the exploits from happening. And if we do that, we can be definitely confident that these exploits wouldn't even get launched on a given workload, so that it propagating to the next workload or the neighboring systems will be far from even happening. So that's what I would like to comment on this.
So let me go over to Kunal. So Kunal, uh, now that you heard Durga Prasad talk about what he believes enterprises should do, and I think the supply chain being very, very crucial. And Srinidhi is also talking about the fact that patch management alone is not probably the solution. What has been your experience in these areas, in terms of, because you've been running intelligence for which is shared intelligence, within a particular kind of industry or kind of organization, set of organizations. How does the ISAC work when it comes to a supply chain?
Sure, and it's a tough question, Mr. Sarkar, in the context that probably there is no single answer to it. But let's try and unpack it, right? The first thing, and this is my personal opinion, what I'm gonna say next is, I think APTs and 0 days get a lot of media attention, but that does not necessarily mean it's the biggest worry an average organization should have. If your organization takes care of nuclear war codes and it has mission critical information, probably yes, that's what you should be worried about. For an average organization, should you be worried about APT and 0 days? Of course the answer is yes. Is that the only thing you should be worried about? Is that what you're gonna be up at night on a Saturday, on a Sunday? The answer is probably no. It is more likely you're gonna get hit by an opportunist kind of an attack, who are basically going to try and hit the weakest organization out there, right? So basically, someone with low to medium level of skills is going to try and hit as many organizations as possible and try and capitalize as much of his time as he or she can. And the typical, you know uh, spray and pray approach. Let's try and get hit as many people. And this brings us to the conversation of basic cyber hygiene. And this is what is, I feel it is 8 out of 10 times is lacking. So whenever we hear in the media that an organization got hit, and quote unquote the public statement is we got hit by a sophisticated attack, in reality what they are saying is it's a off the shelf ransomware for hire. Somebody paid $5 to build a ransomware kit and attack them, right? It wasn't sophisticated. Sorry to say, your cyber hygiene was that bad. That's typically 8 out of 10 times, and I hate to be pessimistic, but their numbers are out there now. And let's not stop there. There are numbers to say, also showcase that 70% of the attacks, or even more, originate from the internal staff. So meaning it's not even a cyber attack, but I mean in the traditional sense, it's not a hacking event. Essentially, one of your staff got phished, one of your staff got hacked, and that one staff's credentials, or that staff's laptop, was the foothold into the environment, into your application, into your infrastructure. And this fundamental problem has gone up because of work from home culture that we've seen in, since 2020, early 2020. And and again, it's not complicated to put things together. We had a situation where pandemic caused the entire world to start working from home. Some organizations were ready for it, some were not, and they literally had to open up the floodgates and allow an application and infrastructure that was inherently internal, it was only intranet, now open to connect from the outside. And goes without saying, your attack surface went up, and hence you started seeing more and more attacks. And all it took was one staff to go down to bring the entire infrastructure down. And that brings to the point of internal segmentation and internal controls as well. There are other statistics out there saying, at least in 2021, supply chain has been a big issue in 2020, 2021. I'm not going to deny that. But the next big problem has been around credential stuffing attacks. I'm going to ask a simple question to the audience right now. Your organization has hundreds of staff, probably thousands, hundreds of thousands of staff members. Are you sure that one of that staff member has not lost his or her credentials on a completely unrelated platform? So LinkedIn got breached, LinkedIn lost hundreds of millions of accounts. Yahoo got breached, it lost 3 billion accounts, and I'm part of it. I'm part of both the breaches, and I can go on and on. There are, a breach, a data dump pretty much every single day. Are you sure one of your staff members is not part of those breaches, and did not have that basic hygiene, basic common sense of not reusing a personal account password, using the same password on a corporate account? So I am part of the LinkedIn
Or
breach.
even, I have also seen what she's talking about. There are examples of people using corporate username and email address and passwords on personal shopping sites.
Agreed,
So
absolutely. So
got hacked.
taking me as an example, my LinkedIn is my Gmail account user ID, and my password is whatever, I love India, that's my password, let's say. What it is not going to take
You
a
should
rocket
always say
science,
that your password is 8 stars.
and it's not going to take a sophisticated attacker to say, okay, let me try and figure out Kunal's corporate email ID, and let me try and use the same password to figure if I can get into the corporate network, right? And the question is going to be, does the corporates have enforced MFA, multi-factor authentication? Again, that cyber hygiene kicks into the conversation. But my note to the audience here, if you're not aware, if your staff has been compromised, at least of course you can't start looking at personal accounts of your staff, but at least the corporate IDs, corporate passwords have been leaked or not. If you don't have eyes on the dark web, if you don't have eyes looking at the internet dumps, you are missing a very, very big piece of information in the intelligence space. You have a huge blind side, right? And it's a matter of time you're going to get a surprise and say, this is what information is already out there about your specific organization. A
Okay,
lot
I
to
think,
chew on, a lot to think about.
yeah, I think we are probably running a little late. So Rajesh, very quickly in a minute, given the fact that you practically covered the whole session in your first part, you know, Tell us about how do service providers react when there is a 0 day? Do you how much time should, because all customers, people like Durga and including me, we are all dependent on one or more managed service providers who are going to give us an advice saying that this is a 0 day attack, this is what you should be doing. What is the usual time that is taken by managed service providers from the time a 0 day attack is publicized, or rather it is detected, to the time that it is communicated?
All right. So this question is kind of a little, so let me sort of take this in a couple of different ways, right? One is basically when you're talking about engaging, let's say, a service provider to help you sort of react to a particular threat in your infrastructure. Maybe you've seen something, right? So that's basically engaging,
No,
let's
I
say,
was
and
I was rather asking about the first information. So let's say Log4j happened, and
yeah,
Log4j happened on Thursday.
yes.
Um, when did the first advisory go out? Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Because I've seen enterprises even coming back on Monday and sending out an advisory.
True, that's correct. So typically, what would actually happen is depending upon the when you talk about the day zero, right? The advisories are what we used to call something called P-certs. They should be actually sort of released as soon as possible by the vendor, right? But again, there is a certain amount of validation that needs to be done for that, right? For example, if there is a log, and I'll give you a simple example of Log4j, right? We have X number of solutions that FireEye has, right? We have to make sure that those particular implementations of Log4j in our products, they are actually vulnerable or not. Based on that, we actually do provide like research or advisory saying that these are the devices that you actually have in your infrastructure, which basically could be compromised, and these are the steps that you need to do. These could actually be workarounds, or these could actually be patches. So, from a vendor perspective, the answer should obviously be as soon as possible, right? Does that kind of answer your question, or was a different question you
No,
have?
not really. But let me get to Durga Prasad with this situation that I think he would agree with, and that is, there are not many OEM enterprises or managed security service providers who would be forthcoming in telling you that, you know what, there is a 0 day, and take step one, two, and three to prevent anything that is going to happen. We're going to come back to you in so much time with an advisory of what exactly needs to be done, because we're studying or we are doing a little research on it. Have you had that experience of of that kind, or did you, or were you told, even the event when the finding was on Thursday, you were told, nobody told you anything on Thursday? People got back to you on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and everybody said our lab has done a great job and they found this. What has been your experience?
So my experience is, so I don't think there is. I personally, I don't feel there is any depending. We shouldn't be depending on advisory or an organization to advise us, because, say, like you said, this was found on, say, this was initially found on Thursday, and if we are sitting quiet till Monday, by then the damage would have happened. So I would say any organization should sign up to their own intel, or kind of sign up to advisory, not advisories, but get some kind of feeds. Do it. So Srinidhi was mentioning it. It's a proactive security measure. We should be proactive at getting security inputs, and keep monitoring various channels where we get this intel and start acting on it, instead of depending on a third party or another firm to advise on what needs to be done. And by then we could become target, Agnidipta. So
May I have a quick minute here just to sort of add to
Sure, Rajesh.
the question? Yeah. So I mean, just to give you an example, right? We were as in FireEye was actually compromised by SolarWinds start, right? And we detected that on, I believe, the 8th or 9th of December in 2020, and our advisory came in out basically I think around the 13th of December. That's basically, it's about 4 days. We declared it, and we declared the extent of it. We declared what could be the tools that were actually effective. Obviously, they were red teaming tools, so we came out with counter actions for those. So that's basically part of how we reacted to it. And just a little expansion of that. If you remember, I talked about look at the rest of it. The basic detection of that was nothing to do with the sunburst itself. It was basically more to do with a re-authentication of a two-factor. So that's basically where it came through, a re-tokenization. So look beyond just the threat itself. Look at the whole attack surface area.
Yeah. So, sometime in my career, I had done an attack surface enumeration. Hello, are you here? Am I audible?
A bit
Yes, we
feeble,
can hear you.
a bit feeble, Agni.
Okay. So, sometime early in my career, we had done attack surface enumeration as a study, and we realized that there are only 5 ways an attack can happen. Your identity could be, like Kunal said, your credentials could be breached, right?
True.
One way. Your endpoint could be breached, whether even physically. So you go somewhere and somebody takes your endpoint and does something wrong with it. Your edge could be breached, right? Because you have VPN servers nowadays, so much focus on VPN, so much effort on VPN. And then your application itself could be breached if the application is widely available. But the fifth one that Kunal talked about is that there could be data exfiltration from inside or an attack from the inside. Everyone is prepared to fight things on the outside. I believe over a period of time and enforced by the pandemic, today's world is where the perimeter has gone to the endpoint. So in this scenario, and I don't think we have much time, but I'll just take 2 more questions, one to Kunal and the second to Durga Prasad. The question, Kunal, is given this scenario that we are in today, um, one is that Durga Prasad said that we know enterprises need to be prepared themselves. They don't depend on your OEM. But there is still a dependence on the OEM because you can, while you can protect yourself, but you've got various applications that are working, right? Srinidhi talked about runtime protection. That's on one part. But then if there is a basic flaw in the software itself, that does need to be addressed. However, the problem is that enterprises think of an application, a very popular application in the world, they would come up with the responses within a period of time. What, in your view, should enterprises be focusing on for that period? Because now you are in an enhanced state of alert. You heard about something gone wrong.
Sorry, was the question for me, Mr. Zakat? The
Yeah, yeah.
audio is unclear. Okay, I'll give some tips and tricks here, and it's one of those questions everyone on the panel would have some flavor, their own flavor into the equation. So, firstly, if you were in that firefighting mode, that there is already an issue, there's already log4j, the whole world is jumping up and down, and you need to patch it. Well, patch it. Simple. There is no silver bullet here, guys. What I'm trying to say is, let's not just get overly carried away by 0 days and APTs. 80% of the times, 90% of the times, that's not going to be the trouble that you're going to have. Yes, we're going to have more and more of such vulnerabilities. We're going to have more and more cases of mass ransomware attacks happening, and then you need to protect yourself. Typically, what's going to take you down is just getting blindsided, just not knowing what's happening in the industry, what your competitor got hit with, or what your competitor successfully defended themselves against. That's also very important. So meaning, if I have a smart team, I'm able to defend against a certain attack. That doesn't mean the next person would have that same capability, same level of expertise, same level of tech or process. And that to me is the differentiating factor, right? In this day and era, how well are you connected? How is that information flowing to you? Is it in, and we call it timely. Information has to get to you in a timely manner. It has to be in an actionable manner. If I send you an 18-page document with all mumbo jumbo, it doesn't help you. Log4j happens and the entire media circus happens and everybody has something to publish about it. It doesn't help you. All you need is that one short, succinct piece of information saying this is what you need to do and this is what you need to do now. That that is the differentiating factor. So timely, actionable, and meaningful and relevant to you, and that
Thank you
to
for
me
that.
is
So
the
that
key.
takes me to the CISO now. And the question for you is that it is increasingly becoming difficult then to not only patch your own, but as you said, we need to find out how many suppliers or partners who the organization is connected to probably has successfully addressed the 0 day as it happens. And I'm going to focus on 0 day because today's discussion is about 0 days. Um, a 0 day can end up as a vulnerability because Log4j was a 0 day at some point in time, probably in 2014 or 2016. I don't
2016,
remember.
2016.
2016, right? But now it is a known problem, and in that case, what are those couple of things that a CISO must do as they come to know about it, apart from all the stuff that you already talked about? And I'm asking you to focus only on the suppliers and the partners. Hello?
Hello. Is this question for me, Agnidipta?
Yes, the question is for
Okay.
you.
Okay. So primarily I would say, while we onboard vendors, while we onboard suppliers for definite kind of a service, I think we should also go beyond. So as CISOs, we should have a kind of additional information or inventory of what exactly this vendor is doing. So is it if it is a service provider, example, providing internet service, what kind of applications are they hosting, what technology are they maintaining, are they using? For example, say in this Log4j story, how many organizations have information about how many vendors of their vendors are using Java, which implies they are vulnerable to Log4j. So how many organizations have such kind of detailed information? I don't think that level of information isn't available, because we work at contract level or service level, and then the services commence or the information flow starts. So I think we need to take this as a lesson, saying, okay, focus on expanding the information you capture about a particular vendor, what services they provide, what are the dependencies, and how they could impact us. Because last year it was SolarWinds, this year it is Log4j, and something else might come up. So we should take this as a measure to have some kind of additional information about vendors to handle it. And second thing is, as part of our preparedness, because these kind of events starts to occur, starts to attack us, and we need, as CISOs, we need to manage. I'd say there should be a periodic tabletop exercises or kind of simulation exercises planned, where a real incident happens, and it's not just the cyber team that's going to manage all this incident, or just the CISO's team. So we, like in case of vendors, there is dependency on procurement team, there is dependency on IT team to patch. So we need to have a collaborative exercise with multiple functions and multiple teams within an organization, where all come together and look at what are they enoughly prepared, do we have enough scale to handle if such kind of a major incident hits us.
Hey, thank you. I just wanted to find out from the team, how are we doing on time? Do we still have some time?
I think we're 15 minutes
We are 15 minutes over.
beyond.
We are 15 minutes beyond. I'm sorry then. Thank you very much. Such an engaging discussion. We've been going on and on. And I would like to thank each one of you. There is no end to our talking on these topics. Let's bring this to a close. Thank you all. Bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you all.
So much.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Good day.